Good evening. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Yeah, man. Today's Monday, January 6th, 2020. Just 6 days into the new year. Only 359 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of beautiful downtown Burbank, California. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. That's right, this is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the Planet. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? We got a full week of Fade to Black in front of us. Our first full week of the year. Tonight, very special guest, Viola Harris. She's here to discuss UFOs and artificial intelligence and a couple of other things. We're going to get to all of that in just a bit. Tomorrow night, it's the return of Micah Hanks right here on Fade to Black. Wednesday night, William Henry joins us. What a great week ahead of us. Of course, Thursday night is another Fader night with open lines all night long. You can follow me on Twitter, simple enough, at JChurchRadio. All right, I'm going to hit this River Moon coffee. Gobekli Tepe. Yeah, you hear me say it a lot. It's the last thing I say as I sign off each night. It's in every commercial that I do. It's on T-shirts. And it's how I say goodbye after every call on Fader Night with open lines. Gobekli Tepe. I started doing this many years ago because I felt that Gobekli Tepe wasn't getting the recognition that it deserves. And today, I think my little campaign is starting to pay off. Gobekli Tepe is currently the oldest megalithic site on our planet, dating back to around 11,000 BC, predating Giza and the Great Pyramid by over 8,000 years. It is both complex and beautiful. It's also important because before its discovery, it was Egypt that was considered the start of everything, and Egyptologists stated over and over again, show us something before Egypt. There is nothing. Egypt is the beginning of everything. We've all heard it. We've all read it. This is what we've been taught. Well, now we have Gobekli Tepe, showing the world that there was a high-tech, intelligent, artistic, and developed a civilization before Egypt. Not by 100 years, not by 1,000 years. 8,000 years before the building of the Great Pyramid or the Great Sphinx. That's incredible. It wasn't supposed to exist. So, over this past weekend, a new series premiered. It's on Netflix. It's called The Gift. It's about Gobekli Tepe. Also, over the weekend, I watched a lecture, an 8-part series put on by the state of California. It's an actual educational lecture series on Mesopotamia and the history of ancient Sumer. And Gobekli Tepe was mentioned many times. Incredible. And it was also mentioned correctly about its dating and that it was the oldest of anything ever on this planet yet discovered. Made me feel pretty good. And this is where we shift gears. Now that I've planted our true history into your mind, and I'm talking about 13,000 years have passed since Gobekli Tepe was built, buried, and discovered. Now, let that fact truly sink in. Let it sink in for a moment. Take a minute. Why? Well, our history didn't start 13,000 years ago. It starts today. Homo sapiens sapien, us, you and I, have been around for 200,000 years. And the last 13,000 are just a blip on the radar of history. The last 100 years, our most giant leap with technology and intelligence, is the beginning of it all. The start of history. 10,000 years from now, or 1,000,000, there will be a history teacher with her class, and she's going to look out to those students and say these words. She's going to say, our history started in the year 2020 AD, when ancient man went from the Stone Age to technology. And I guarantee it. There is no other way to look at it. Today, we are the beginning. History starts now. It's just the same way we look back at the importance of, say, Gobekli Tepe, or the Great Pyramid, or ancient Sumer. The turning points of history. Our future selves will look back at us as ancient, primitive, and the dawn of civilization. That's right. I'll say it again. History starts today. That classroom, 1,000,000 years in the future, that classroom will be looking at a timeline, right? They'll be looking at a timeline stretched out across in front of them. And on it, there will be the big dates on that 1,000,000-year timeline, right? There'll be a date when time travel was discovered. There'll be a date on that timeline when interstellar space travel happened for the first time. There'll be a date on that 1,000,000-year timeline when the first colony was formed on another exoplanet other than our own, right? It's going to be right there, 1,000,000 years. The first date on that timeline, all the way to the left, the first date, the start of it all, will be today, 2020 AD, the year ancient man crossed over from the Stone Age to technology. Think about it. There will be no mention of Gobekli Tepe. That's not going to be on the timeline. The Great Pyramid, it's not going to be there. There's not going to be anything about fire or electricity, because over 1,000,000-year time span, it all happened at the same time. To them, it's going to be one little blip in history. We are that ancient version of our future selves. That's how they are going to look at us today. This, today, is the time when all of our history is actually getting documented. Now it's searchable and it's archived. In the distant future, when anyone wants to research history, the dating on everything will be from, you guessed it, right now. All of those huge server farms that are storing our history today, they are our modern libraries. They are built now in the present. This is the beginning of everything. You see, the historians of the future, the teachers of the future, the archaeologists of the future in 999 AD, they're not going to be cracking open actual books. No. They'll be looking at the data that was created in the year 2020 AD. To them, it's the start of civilization. They will look at today as the actual turning point, because there is everything before and everything after 2020 AD, right? And it's kind of like music. It's kind of like music if you think about it. There's everything before Elvis everything after Elvis. There's everything before Van Halen, everything after Van Halen. And history's going to show there's everything before 2020 and everything after. Our current timeline, right? If you think about it, is why I started this rant with Gobekli Tepe. Our current history timeline is short and it's simple. Our current timeline is 13,000 years, and it's easy for us to cover because everything just happened. It's still new to us. If you think about it, and we continue to look at it in these terms, right? And I'm talking about language, right? Writing, math, astronomy, cosmology, Gutenberg, the press. That is a turning point in history. Gutenberg, the printing press was our first internet. Before that, everything had to be written one page at a time. One page at a time. It took forever. Gutenberg rolls around, and we have got mass communication. That is a huge turning point. That'll be on our timeline, our 13,000-year timeline. Gutenberg right there. Wheat, the domestication of wheat. Without that, there is no us today. That's on our timeline. Ancient Sumer with math and writing. Writing. Think about this. Cuneiform. Big change in our history. That's on our timeline. Galileo is on our timeline. Galileo. Newton. Sir Isaac Newton is on our timeline. Thomas Edison has to be on our timeline, right? Nikola Tesla. Einstein. These huge advances. Louis Pasteur. Huge advances. Big blips on the radar on our timeline. We can just look and examine all of it. Microsoft. Right? Huge blips on the timeline, and they're all fresh. There's certainly huge points in our history, as brief as it is, but if you think about it in the big picture, the really big picture, all of it just brought us from the Stone Age to modern civilization. That's right. And it happened overnight. It was the snap of a finger. History from Gobekli Tepe to 2020 AD is just honestly the blink of an eye. History starts today, and all of us are a part of it. We were here when it all began, 2020 AD. There is no other way to look at it than this. 1,000,000 years from now, you and I are ancient man. That's the classification we are going to have in class, in school. Ancient man, a museum, walking through, nice diorama. There, behind the glass, somebody sitting at a computer. Ancient man, the dawn of history, 1,000,000 years ago. This is when man left the caves and found technology and Starbucks. Think about this. It's pretty incredible, isn't it? And the way that we look at ourselves today, where we think about this technology and we think about everything that we have and the knowledge and the libraries and the books and the teaching and the math and the history and all of that, they had the same point of view, the same reference in the year zero. They had the same point of reference at 3000 BC. They thought that they had it all together. They were documenting history. They had no idea that today, a mere 5,000 years later in the year 2020, that we would consider that the Stone Age, and we would consider that ancient man. And in the big timeline, that 1 million year timeline, us today at the beginning, we are truly ancient. This is when history starts. History starts today. Think about that. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. My email is jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. You can follow me on Twitter at jchurchradio. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox. Hashtag F2BQ is Fade to Black questions. We have 2 chat rooms open, one over at Spreaker, one over at KGRA The Planet. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. I'll be right back with our guest, Paola Harris, kicking off another amazing week here on Fade to Black. Stay with me.